Now, he's been a deeply divisive figure in British politics ever since he very first entered Parliament, and that was back in 1987. And now, I suppose you could call him party-hopping, George Galloway, because he's been in three, is an MP for the third time after winning Rochdale last month in a landslide victory for his own Workers' Party of Britain.
Mr Galloway says his party will disrupt the upcoming general election with hundreds of candidates ready to stand. And as you can see, he joins us now. Good morning to you,
Morning.
Mr Galloway. Shortly after your election in Rochdale, the Prime Minister felt so moved by what had happened that he stood on the steps of Downing Street and
How
said
could
this.
you tell? He stood
And
on...
it's beyond alarming that last night the Rochdale by-election returned a candidate who dismisses the horror of what happened on October the 7th, who glorifies Hezbollah and is endorsed by Nick Griffin, the racist former leader of the BNP.
Right. What about what he says is wrong?
Well, I think I dealt with that at the time, and I think he's probably a little embarrassed about the melodrama bringing out steps to stand on in Downing Street. It's the
He's
fag
never
end.
expressed any embarrassment about doing that. He's concerned about you. And I ask you, what about what he said is wrong?
Well, I'm sorry, I'm not here on trial. I was elected in a landslide.
Sorry, you're here for an interview, George Galloway. No one's putting you on trial. This is a television studio, and you represent a political party which is putting up candidates for the general election.
Are you going to let me speak?
You just complained about the question that I asked you, saying that you're on trial.
First of all,
it's an interview.
First of all, this is the 7th term I'm spending in Parliament, not the 3rd, as Richard erroneously said. I have been elected over 37 years in Parliament.
Yeah.
So if I'm this divisive...
Three parties, though, George.
Well, that makes it even more extraordinary, not less. But the facts are, I have represented more constituencies than any other political figure in British political history, other than Mr. Churchill, who had the benefit of always doing it from the two main parties. So I'm not here to talk about Rishi Sunak. I'm here to tell you that we have hundreds of parliamentary candidates turning up outside Parliament today for a photo call, because we're going to be a significant factor in the upcoming general election. We'll play the same role vis-à-vis Labour that Mr. Farage and Reform will play vis-à-vis the Conservatives.
So is your principal aim, then, in the coming election to basically screw things up for Keir Starmer?
Yeah, we want to replace the Labour Party. We think that today's Labour Party is a parody of what a Labour Party should be. And we think that Labour voters deserve better. So we'll be standing as, if you like, real Labour. I'm not a worshipper of dead Russians or Germans. I'm a follower of Mr. Tony Benn. We are the embodiment, if you like, of Mr. Benn's vision of Labour.
But
There's a lot of takers
how much
for
of what you said is down to what I suppose you could call the politics of the personal, because you were chucked out of Labour. You were thrown out of Labour, and I just wonder if that's instilled in you a harbouring resentment at the entire institution that Labour represents, because it dispensed with you.
No, I mean, Tony Blair threw me out of the Labour Party over the Iraq War, and I've been proven absolutely right about that, and he absolutely wrong. And all the media chorus that sang his praises at the time are left with ash in their mouths. So I feel I've got nothing to prove to Labour. I've beaten them 3 times.
Were you right about
since
Saddam?
I
You
was.
talked about Iraq. Were you right about Saddam Hussein when you said to his face in a meeting with him, this monster, this tyrant, that you respected him and that he was indefatigable? I mean, everybody makes mistakes. I'm just wondering if you look back at your political career, if that was one of them.
Well, I've made lots of mistakes, but not that one.
And
that jibe doesn't quite have the sting it used to.
It's not a jibe, it's reportage. It's what happened. You sat with him in the same room, opposite him in a chair, and you described your respect for him, and you said that you saluted his indefatigability.
Yeah.
Now, that's not a smear.
Congratulations
That's what you
for
said.
getting it right. I was speaking about the Iraqi people, and it was 25 years ago. You might have found some newer cuttings to throw at me.
And
but
George
it doesn't
Galloway,
have
I
the
did find
sting.
a newer cutting, which was from Rishi Sunak, and you dismissed that as well. So can you...
I think everyone's dismissing Rishi Sunak. Nothing he says is of any value. He
You
might not
George
even
Galloway,
be
you
there.
dismiss every question that you ask.
He might
Firstly,
not
can you-
even be there.
OK,
I've
he's the
got
Prime
to
Minister of
challenge
this
you on what
country.
you just said. You were not, I'm sorry, I've seen the tape of that meeting with Saddam Hussein. You were not talking about the Iraqi people. That may have been something you referred to later.
Do you mean,
hang on,
do you mean the tape
just...
from 1993?
It doesn't matter when it was, it's on
Well,
tape.
you've already asked me in this studio about that
you were
many
talking
times.
about the Iraqi people, and you weren't. You were talking about Saddam Hussein, who's a monster. It was a monster.
Do you want to speak about 2024 and the upcoming general election?
Mr. Galloway, background's important.
30 years ago, when
it's important.
in this studio, I have spoken about this decades ago. I know it's a new generation of people
to go back to
around
these
here.
things, but they are important.
It's not inconvenient, but the British people are in a state of crisis. Our country can't even defend its own border. It can't even keep control of the thousands of people who have arrived here illegally. The NHS is in total crisis. Our country's falling apart around our ears, and you want to talk about something that happened 30 years ago?
For my MP, and I learned, or was reminded, that he had once cozied up to Saddam Hussein, it would give me pause for thought.
Well,
I think it's worth reminding people that happened.
Well, I was right about Iraq.
You weren't right about Saddam.
It's you that was miserably wrong.
What do you mean? What I was wrong?
You've got cuttings on me. I've got cuttings on you. You parroted your support for a war that turned into an absolute cataclysm. Yet you sit there as if none of it ever happened.
George
I know your war record.
Standing for Parliament, not Richard Madeley. So why won't you answer the question?
About Iraq 30 years ago?
Yes.
This is absurd, preposterous. And you're reminding me all over again why I stopped coming here. Because this banality, this triviality, this fetishization of press cuttings...
Okay, so you won't answer questions about a few weeks ago, and you won't answer questions about a few 30 years ago.
I'm here to talk about Britain.
Why don't we ask you, what is the question you would like to ask yourself?
I'd like to ask myself,
Yeah.
and wish you had asked me, about Monty Panesar, the famous left-arm spin bowler,
Right.
English cricket ace, who's standing for Parliament for us in Southall. That's interesting and current.
That is interesting and current. I'd like to take you back to something else that's interesting and current, and that is what our own Prime Minister said on the steps of Downing Street when you were elected member for Rochdale. It is beyond alarming that last night the Rochdale by-election returned a candidate who dismisses the horror that happened on October the 7th, who glories Hezbollah and was endorsed by Nick Griffin, the racist former leader of the British National Party.
Well, what am I?
And I asked you, which of those
the
things are
Muslim
wrong?
candidate? Richard asked me off camera if I was a practicing Muslim.
Yes, based on...
I'm a practicing Roman Catholic. That's how good his press cuttings are.
I was referring you to your online profile, which talks about your conversion to Islam a number of years ago.
Well,
I was simply asking if that was still a part of your life.
That's false. Still a part of my life.
I'm just asking.
It's never been a part of my life.
Then why is that?
I'm a Roman Catholic in good standing. Okay?
Why do you think that profile is there on many, many websites that you converted to Islam many years ago?
I don't know. It's probably running out of the same school as Rishi Sunak's false statements standing on steps in Downing Street. Isn't the key word, Susanna, elected?
Yes.
I got more votes than all the other parties put together.
Yes, but my question wasn't how many votes you got. My question was which of those statements by Rishi Sunak is wrong?
All of them.
Well,
I don't dismiss the horror of what happened on October 7th.
Good.
It's completely baseless.
Good.
I don't glorify Hezbollah, and I wasn't endorsed by Nick Griffin. Make up your mind, am I the champion of the Muslims, or am I endorsed by a guy who hates Muslims?
And Nick Griffin tweeted in February this year.
He issued a tweet.
Get out and vote for George Galloway today. He's not perfect, but it's the best way by far to stick two fingers up to the rotten political elite and their fake news media cronies. I didn't say you were responsible, George Galloway.
Well, why are you putting it to me?
I said what was wrong about the fact that you're endorsed by Nick Griffin, the racist
Susanna Reid was his
BNP.
favourite television presenter.
I would absolutely reject that endorsement.
As I absolutely reject it.
Good.
As I did.
Well,
so
there
there's
we go.
three
We
statements.
finally got to the end
There's three
of
statements.
the first question we
All
asked
of them
you 10 minutes
false.
ago.
All of them false.
George Galloway, it's lovely to talk to you this morning. Thanks very
right.
much indeed for coming in.
Incidentally, I was quoting an article in the New Statesman, which is a reasonably reliable source, but if you say that it's not true, then it's not true. Thank you, Mr. Galloway.
Not that I say it's not true, Richard.
OK.
It is not true.
OK, and I'm just telling you what the source was, the New Statesman.
Check your facts before you come on
I just checked
television.
it again.
You're old
online.
enough to know better.
It's 2012, an interview you gave to the New Statesman. There we are. OK, it's... well, we knew that would be interesting.